This is Rich.
Hi, Rich. How are you doing this morning?
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. You want to go back? I'll go back to mute.
Okay. And Mr. Cliff, would you like to kick off our meeting with the executive team updates?
Okay. The executive team update consists of, we're starting to focus, or we should be trying to focus on reviewing the documents that was put together in late December. We need to go ahead and align our goals and strategies based on starting the new fiscal year in July 1. Of course, we're gonna continue to focus on the monthly priorities as we go forward. We're also looking for candidates who would want to be a part of the executive team, and we're mainly focused on about 3 or 4 positions that are community reps, highlighting let me see what they're focused on. Should be focused on, give me a minute. Let me get my notes. All right, I will, I can't find my notes right away. So I'll come back to those. But what I like to do, Amanda, is to set up a meeting either for later in this week or the first of next week, such that we can have all the executive team in on that conference, so that we can go through those documents, understand what's in them, and at least anybody that shows an interest in becoming a candidate for the executive team, to get that information to Amanda such that she can present that in the meeting that she's going to set up, or the conference that she's going to set up with the executive team. I like to go through those documents. I like to go through the goals and strategies such that we can start to focus on July 1, coming out of this pandemic. What is our priorities going forward? And that concludes the executive team report.
Okay, thank you. And Priscilla, is Priscilla on? Is there anything you would like to add if you're on this call this morning? Okay.
She had a coronavirus meeting earlier, so she may not come in until later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and now, thank you, Mr. Cliff, for the update. And we have Kelly McNeil Wilhelm with Family Support Services, and she's going to talk to us about Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. And Kelly, just give me a second to share my screen.
Hi, this is Diana Powell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There we go. Kelly, are you with us this morning?
I am. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
perfect. Yes. And we are ready whenever you are.
Okay. So I will, good morning, everyone. I will just start with a brief history of Child Abuse Prevention Month, or Child Abuse Prevention. So in the 1960s, emergency room doctors were noticing children that were coming in with new and old injuries. They started talking to each other about those injuries, and they coined the term battered child syndrome. So that was like the first awareness of child maltreatment. And then in 1972, Prevent Child Abuse America was formed in Chicago. 1974, because we know sometimes it takes the legislators a little bit of time to catch up with the grassroots. But in 1974, the first federal child protection legislation was passed. And it was called the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. And so of course, what legislation does is provide federal funding to states for prevention, assessment, investigations. And so that was the first legislation. In 1982, Congress resolved to the first Child Abuse Prevention Week, and it was in June. So that was the first time that it was recognized by Congress. And then in 1983, President Ronald Reagan proclaimed April as the first Child Abuse Prevention Month. And President Barack Obama in 2016 continued that tradition. He issued a presidential proclamation stating that during National Child Abuse Prevention Month, we recommit to giving every child a chance to succeed and to ensure that every child grows up in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment that is free from abuse and neglect. So here in North Carolina, we have one of the Child Abuse Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina is a conglomerate of the Prevent Child Abuse America. So in Wake County, we work really closely with Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina. And Amanda, that was, I sent you over their toolkit, because with COVID, like for Child Abuse Prevention Month, everything had to be reimagined, reinvented. We had several activities that was going to be scheduled around Wake County, but we had to move those digitally. Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina did the same thing. So I shared the toolkit with you, where people can go on and find out what Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina, what activities they have. I know there are some online trainings that people can engage in. Those are free. And also Safe Child is also another one of our partners that we work closely with. And what we're working on in Wake County, what we've been working on for the past year was the Wake County Child Abuse Prevention Plan. So you may hear Wake CAP. And that is just a conglomerate of community partners coming together. There's police departments that are involved in there, and with that conglomerate, of course, Wake County, Project Enlightenment. So just a lot of community partners that are engaged in that, the Wake County Child Abuse Prevention Plan, which is just a plan that we come together. We want to come together to make sure that every child in Wake County is nurtured, and they're thriving, and that they're safe. So this Child Abuse Prevention Month, April, the theme from Prevent Child Abuse America was be a connection. And we wanted everyone to know that everyone can be a connection. It doesn't matter. It's not just people that are involved in this work, but everyone can be a connection. In 2008, Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina adopted the pinwheel. Can y'all see my pinwheel? It used to be that that instead of we would focus on the losses. So we used to tie a ribbon for every child that was lost. So they moved in 2008 from just awareness to now to prevention. And so the pinwheel is symbolic of the carefree childhood that every child deserves. So 2008 was the pinwheels for prevention was introduced. So you may see in April, if you see pinwheels that are planted, a lot of people are planting pinwheel gardens. That is what that is. So, and that's kind of also, you know, what one of Wake County's projects as well. I think what we're looking at, what I also shared was our calendar of events for April. So we're getting down now to the end of the month, but we do have a training coming up on this Friday. There is a 5 protective factors training that someone from Safe Child will be facilitating. And we know, of course, in this work with child abuse prevention, we always hear about risk factors, but we very rarely hear about protective factors. So the protective factors are tools that we give to parents that helps them cope and you know, helping families take care of themselves will of course help them to also take care of their children and make sure that their children are safe. So we invite you all on Friday to join us on the call for the 5 protective factors training. Any questions for me?
This is Cliff. Will you be doing an invite to us to that session? And if so, can we get that sent out?
Yes, so I have shared it with Amanda, and I know Amanda has all of your email addresses. So Amanda, please feel free to share the flyer that has the telephone number on there that anybody can call in. So yes, Cliff, you're more than welcome to join us on Friday.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if you mentioned this. The date next week, is that supposed to be the 30th?
No, it's the 24th. So it should be Friday. It's this Friday.
Oh, okay. But I was looking at the Darkness to Light Steward of Children.
So Darkness to Light is also another just another training that we offer, and this was just on our flyer. Just says by April 31st. Just go to the Darkness to Light.
You mean April 30th?
Yeah, by April 30th. Go to the Darkness to Light website. And Darkness to Light, so Darkness to Light Stewards of Children is training about child sexual abuse, because we know 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused by the time they're 18. So the Darkness to Light Stewards of Children training is that child sexual abuse training. And that is, again, you know, one of our partners. We have several Wake County staff that are facilitated, who are facilitators for that training. But of course, now we're not able to come together as a group. So we're just asking that you would just go to that website to get information about child sexual abuse.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any other questions for Kelly before we move on? Okay. Thank you again, Kelly. Let's see if I can get this back. Okay, so next we have some SEV updates. And as far as hiring goes for the 2 program assistant positions, I am one of them. I am Amanda Salami, again, for those who might have missed it in the beginning. I started, I think about a month ago now, which is crazy. I've been here for about a month. I know there's another position in the eastern part of that's going to be focused on the eastern part of the county, and that is still in motion. It got a little bit tied up in the hiring freeze due to the current situation, but we are moving forward with hiring that second candidate. We are looking at around a June 1st start date, everything going according to plan. So we will keep you guys updated as we move along in that process. For the crisis response, we have 4 tiers of community. I'm going to discuss those 4 components with you guys in a few seconds. We're trying to find $5,000 to $10,000 to go towards community response And then these are the 4 areas that we'll cover. So give me a second to find this, and I will fill you in on the 4 tiers of community. The first one is community coaching. Community coaching would provide families with trauma-informed life coaching and informational links to services to help them navigate the current environment, while also introducing them to longer-term supports for mental and physical wellness, education, employment, financial management, housing, and civic engagement. The second tier would be community covers. And through community covers, we'll be providing direct links to housing resources for residents seeking safe shelter and helping people navigate and access county supports. The third one is Crosby Connects. And through this one, we will be facilitating resource acquisitions and distributions for basic unmet needs, such as toiletry items, clothing, and supplies. And our last one is Crosby Convenes. And we will host virtual community conversations with the community advocates and residents to support strategic planning of community-driven solutions for social and economic stability. And does anybody want me to read those again or go over them in more detail?
What was the last one?
Crosby Convening. And let me pull it up. Crosby Convenes, and this is the one where we'll host virtual conversations with community advocates and residents to support strategic planning of community-driven solutions for social and economic stability.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Cliff. What's the start date on these initiatives?
So we are beginning to work on them as a team now. This will be something that is ongoing in addition to the current initiatives that we are going through. Ms. Verna just drafted this up to kind of help direct us individually and in our team and give us focus areas and what to work on.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Ms. Verna and myself and Dr. West and county commissioners, city commissioners, people on the EOC have been, I guess that's what these community talks are about, but I am really, really, really concerned with the bureaucracy. If I, with all of that support, cannot get through to these systems, cannot get through to, and when we talk about navigating these systems, unless some policy changes, then, you know, right now we're having so many people who are falling through the cracks behind this, in the midst of this COVID virus. And we have an upcoming crisis that's coming with folks with couch surfers, people who've been sleeping on couches, or people who've been sharing a room because they came out of the hotel to live in with somebody, but now who have lost their jobs to the coronavirus and are being asked to leave those homes. We have women that are in the midst of trying to flee away from domestic violence. Other folk who are women who have kids who were, and the young lady that are in the system where their children have been taken away from them, who now have lost their jobs and are in just turmoil because they're afraid they won't be able to get their children back because they're not able to comply with the terms of the adjudication for child protective services. So, those are just some things that, I see right now that I don't know. I is that some of the conversation that we're supposed to be having and listening to? Is that what that's about? Because that's, to me, is critical right now.
Yeah.
Because people are, that is critical.
Yeah, 100%, Ms. Geraldine. So I think there's two pieces going on. One is how can we connect people to the resources that are available and do exist? Because I know there are some people who could be helped by existing resources that just don't know the information. So how do we plug people into that? And then I think there's the second even more important piece, which is if resources are running out, or the policies are blocking folks, how do we change those policies and reduce the barriers so that people can get connected? And that is where Verna and I have been pushing the county commissioner folks to say, we don't want to convene these conversations if y'all aren't willing to do something different. Because we can only do so much. We can broker information connections, but in the end, it is the policies and the availability of resources that's going to affect whether people actually get that connection. So I think that is the goal, and that's one of the conversations that's coming up, Ms. Geraldine, with Dr. West, is to say what are some of those barriers and how do we adjust and how do we get resources directed in the right direction to make those changes, because you're absolutely correct. That is the, ultimately, that is the barrier to access.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that is, we're trying to do both at the same time with what does exist and what is available, get people connected to that, but where there are walls and barriers in the way, how do we change those and make it more accessible?
Okay.
Kristen, this is Cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any community people that we are aware of to sit in on that session with Dr. West? Is the first question.
Mm-hmm.
The second question is, do we have a sponsor or coordinator in the city of Raleigh? Although I know that the city of Raleigh only put up $100,000 towards this effort, and the county has put up much more. But at least we would want to know where the city is focusing their money at. And of course, Dr. West is a good start for us to have that conversation with.
Yeah, great.
Can I,
yeah,
can I comment?
Mm-hmm.
Can I comment on that? I've been back and forth with the city about this issue. I've talked to the city manager. We've talked to council members, and Lord, sometimes I just hate even say this boy's name, because God knows he's so busy defending the city that he can't even hear. But the city, you're right, the city just gave, I think it was $125,000 or $150,000 between Passage Home and Triangle Family Services, and it was supposed to be to help folks in hotels. The problem is access. Let me go back to the question that you're asking about. Are there any folks that's available to talk? I've been serving people, but we got to understand the problems with what many of these folks is. Dr. West has helped to keep some of these folks in hotels, but they got phone calls that you can, they don't have work. You can call into their phones, but they can't call out of their phones. People who are really suffering don't have access to tools to join into these conversations or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, so bless Dr. West's heart. He has really been helpful in trying to help people get into hotels, because like I said, there's a new wave of homelessness, and that is the couch surfers who are being pushed out of the homes, and the domestic violence women who just feel like they can't take anymore, or like I said, those women who've been doubling up, and who have child protective services orders, and now are reaching out and crying because I can't comply with my order. Mm-hmm. And I was going somewhere with this, but anyway, Corey, and when I talked to him this morning about the city's involvement in this piece, and they seem to think that is not their role, mm-hmm. that is the role of the county, and that they've done as much as they can do when they try to work through organizations, because that's not a city roles, so they have to work through nonprofit organizations. And so what I was saying to him this morning was, listen, the process by which you work through nonprofit organizations is not working, because they have to have their referrals from certain people. If the people cannot reach, I don't care what you put out there on the online, you put all these numbers out here, but you call and call and call and call and call, and you can't get anybody. As I've said, if I had 8 people working with me to try to help me get through, and I couldn't get, we still have not really got the services that we need for families, because one is saying we're out of money. The other one saying is, well, I don't have a referral. Well, it's not this program, it's this program that they're supposed to do. So those are the things those are the barriers. Like you're saying, Christian, those are the barriers that we got to work through, because if I feel like I have a lot of wherewithal, I feel like working with Dr. West, county manager, city manager, Verna, Lorena McDowell. I mean, there were about 8 folks working on this one case and could not get no services through.
Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that Verna has proposed, is trying to set up a more direct link through SEV, so that we can make that immediate connection versus trying to go through and around and around and around. But we have to see if that is going to be accepted by folks. But that is the goal, is to say, here's the person who needs a service, connect them to SEV, and then they get bridged in, versus that overwhelming process. And Cliff, to your question, I think Ms. Geraldine is right about the city. I don't know who has been involved in all the conversations, but I think that is typically their response, is that they don't do human services type work. They do that through the nonprofit organizations like Passage Home, like Ms. Geraldine said. So I don't know.
Hi, Christian.
Go ahead, Kathy.
This is Kathy, and as you all know, I do work for the city. I work in the Housing and Neighborhood Community Engagement. And while that statement sounds discouraging, and yes, it is discouraging, but the fact of the matter is that the city does not have a Health and Human Services department or division or people on staff to handle things. So we do have to work through the nonprofits. However, speaking to Ms. Geraldine's concerns, and I think she's right on target, where we're giving this money to these nonprofits to work on these very targeted problems. Because we don't have staff on hand to do that, we do have to look at the fact, what are we getting for our money? Are these nonprofits really utilizing the money in a way that we want to help? And do they provide the type services and the access to services like Ms. Geraldine was talking about, that really is going to get us to where we want to be? The city does not, again, have a human services division like the county does. So it's not as though we don't want to help, but that's just the mechanism that we have to go through right now. But I think you are absolutely right, Ms. Geraldine. We absolutely need to take a look and be more intentional about what we are using our money for, and if these nonprofits have the capacity to really serve the folks that need the help the most. So I really appreciate your thoughts about that. And as a city staffer, that's the conversation I want to have with my peers at the city.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question? Has there been any plan to at least bring both of the CEOs or executive directors of Triangle Family Services and Passage Home together to have this conversation?
During the pandemic, I'm not sure that there has been, but again, that's a good question to present to everybody right now. And I don't know if it's because the need is so great right now, and the way that we're doing work right now is so great as well. I don't know if that's the problem.
That's part of it. That is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That is part of it.
And when you think about it, guys, $150,000 does not go a very long way when you're thinking about how vast the need is right now.
That's right. And I think they were saying there was more than 500 people on the waiting list. But I think the problem is the disconnect between the grassroots community and service providers. That's where I think the disconnect is.
I agree.
Because as issues come, if we're not listening, you know, if I like I told Corey, if our city is not listening and not acting, you know what I'm saying, to do whatever it is that they can do, and then really think about how, if we don't have a city in this crisis, can we create one? Because that's such a disconnect. Like I said, that population that's coming now, it hadn't really caught up. You know what I'm saying? So we don't really see. I mean, I can see it because I see the folks sleeping in the cars. I see the people even at my church, you know, every car that's there, somebody done broke into to sleep in. You know, folks calling me saying, can you help me, and being very discouraged because they can't get through through those lines. You know, nobody's answering. At one time it was the folks who were on the street and who didn't have any type of shelter, who wanted to take baths, not being able to get into Oak City because nobody was there. So it takes somebody that is that's providing direct services to these folks to really connect with folks, to let them know what's going on. But when I love Corey, but you know, Corey got to get out of this thing of, I got to protect the city, because, you know, just hear what we're saying. Nobody's trying to, you know, blame the city or point fingers at the city or whatever. I'm just trying to tell you where the disconnects are, and so that we can really begin to come together. I know whether it's don't point fingers at the county, city don't point, but come together, talk about how can you bridge these gaps.
Right. I think, again, we were talking about this at our town meeting yesterday, and you all can attest to the same thing, I'm sure, is that this pandemic, if one thing that this pandemic has done is really shine a bright light on the gaps that we have. And now is the time to really try to address it.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. And Ms. Geraldine, I know you've talked to me before COVID-19 about how we are reaching our families. And I'm struggling just a little bit. So please, I want everybody, please know this is Book of Yucca. This is not Wake County Human Services. I'm asking this as a personal question. So my days have turned into where we are getting the food security across the county. So the comments and the questions that we're having here in the city of Raleigh, we're having town of Wake Forest, all these rural areas where access is not available as readily as sometimes we have in the city because of the walking and accessibility to different churches and resources. One of the things that I'm really cautioning I'm really being cautious how I put this, because I don't want to offend anybody. I just want to make sure that while we are uncovering these gaps were here prior to COVID-19.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And when we are able to jump and find all these resources, well, these resources were there prior to COVID-19. It's just how it's being handled. My push with not just with my MCE families, I just got off the phone and I'm back and forth on 2 different calls. My days are back to back with Zooms. Working with some of our smaller groups, working with Loaves and Fishes this morning, and just helping us, including Wake County Public School System, because Tamara and I had this conversation about the list is over almost 700 people that's on this individual list. Here are the questions that I have put back to everybody to ask our families. Prior to COVID-19, how were you getting your resources? Prior to COVID-19, how were you going to the market? How were you getting all these resources that we're setting out here in the community? Prior to COVID-19, what was your living conditions? Because what is happening, and Ms. Geraldine knows where I'm coming from with this, what I'm about to say. Please, let's not create a system a further system of dependency by doing all of this. Hear me to the end on this one, okay? We are jumping through hoops to try to justify it because we're saying we're in a pandemic and we are having a crisis and now we're finding funds. How are we helping empower our families to be able to do for themselves, regardless of what the situation is, regardless of what the climate is, regardless of the pandemic, because what I am watching, trust me, I got documentation showing that we're going to be talking about with Ms. Geraldine and Dr. West, of overdoing will actually put us farther back to where our families are going to be in a bigger hole. Last week with the town of Wake Forest, and this is not the whole town, this is in Massenburg community where it's a low income community, right? We touched on mental health. We're doing all these one-on-ones and trying to help what Ms. Geraldine had asked us to do, which we are looking at doing for our families, including the coaching part and bringing the resources to help our families understand. Many of you, and I know not everyone because they may not have had a checking account, just received your stimulus check. What are you doing with your stimulus check? How are you best advocating for yourself? Because the time that you're waiting for someone to get you into a hotel, I need our families to understand that this is not a fanfare where we're not going to pay, they're not going to evict you, but how are you utilizing the funds that you do currently have to your best ability? Prior to COVID-19, we have been struggling to teach our families that the monies that you do have, how to help them budget and allocate those funds. I am not saying for us not to help. What I'm saying is we have to be very mindful, because what is going to happen is the funds are going to run out. Crime rate is going to go up because out of desperation, you were giving me, and I'm being realistic. You're giving me to the point that now you have hurt me. We have different options. While me personally, if they had asked me, I wouldn't open up all these hotel rooms. We need to set up at these schools, and we need to set up these different places where we can host families, especially those that are in crisis, and have resources that are helping them move forward. I watched how individuals went to the hotels because they had symptoms. It was drinking my hot coffee, taking my temperature, and coughing got you quarantined. And they sent you to this hotel. And then when your test results came back a few days later and you had no symptoms, you were not positive, they had to actually call the sheriff to get some of these families out of the hotels. It was done out of desperation to be able to lay your head somewhere. And I understand that, but we have to look at what are we telling our families? Are we telling folks to just take because it's available, or are we saying build off of what we have? And I'm not talking about Ms. Geraldine, I'm not talking about the domestic violence situations and so forth. But I know for a fact we are having folks who are using those reasons to get pushed to the front. And I'm not saying that's for everybody.
Yeah,
Please don't.
Can I interject right there? And you're right, there are folks, but I'm going to say what I said yesterday. That ain't everybody.
Right, and that's why I said, please know that I'm not saying everybody.
Yeah. I just want to interject here, because what we could do before COVID-19 is not what we can do right now. You know what I'm saying? Before COVID-19, first of all, we got a lot of mental health problems that we hadn't dealt with. So of course those mental health problems are going to come right back in now that we're in this COVID-19. A lot of families were doubled up. They were working. But it ain't so easy to catch up now. I'm gonna tell you that. It is not that easy to try to play catch up on a job that's only paying minimum wage.
Miss Geraldine.
It ain't that easy. I'm sorry.
Miss Geraldine, this is Cliff. I'm going to give you 5 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap this part up.
Okay.
And then we're going to move on down the agenda, Amanda. But go ahead and finish your thought process.
But I just want us to understand that at this point in time, yes, you're right. There are those. I dealt with a woman that I felt like it was not a fact that she was on the floor in her daughter's house. It was a fact that when she lost her job, that the daughter said, "You all are becoming a burden to me, and I just can't afford it." So there, regardless of whatever was going on then, I just don't see this as the time, because when you're talking about bringing folks together, you can't bring people together. You know what I'm saying? So we got to do what we got to do. Now, one of the things that we can do is try to help them while they're there, to let them know this is not forever. This is not forever. You know, if we probably now is the best time to really reach people and try to get to people, because our community is traumatized, not just individuals, but our whole community is traumatized. So I say that you are right in many aspects. But while I understand that some of these parents are whatever they are, I cannot leave these children out here on the streets with their parents.
No, and I agree, but I just want us to be mindful of how and the strategic things that we're doing. So I've literally sat down with this morning on our 8 o'clock call and worked through a plan that it was more important. And I know a lot of this has nothing to do with just the food resources. Food resources, honestly, is overwhelming, and we're causing food waste because you can only store but so much food in your freezer. However, we were looking at it from the holistic side and addressing some of the barriers. So as advocating for these families to make sure that they had internet service that was already free or at low cost prior to COVID-19, helping some of our families, again, I'm going back to the budgeting, when we're able to take what resources we have and utilize those resources prior to going out and asking for help. I think the empowerment piece that Ms. Geraldine, that you have been pushing us to do is critical. And I'm hoping that when we have that conversation with Dr. West and the rest of our team to help shape that. But I went as far as going and asking specific families, what truly is the need? You know, your food stamps have been increased for many, right? You've gotten, so it's not the finance, it's sometimes it may be a lack of transportation. How about let's educate our families on how you actually can have your food delivered to your home? How were you getting groceries prior to COVID-19? If transportation is a problem now, it was a problem before. So how did you manage then? And so working through those barriers and helping them to see, when I tell you they dwindled down that needs list from the Wake County Public School to literally less than 60 people, when we start asking and probing those questions and getting the families to understand, you have this power already in your hand. How do we now help you embrace that power and break this cycle? I am really concerned about the housing. We just went up to the church the other day and found a family sleeping on one of our school buses. And we didn't say anything to them because it was raining. But if we went back out and I had that conversation of, let me help you figure this out, because this is only going to escalate, because like you're saying, there's nowhere for the housing. But there are some things that can be put in place that persons themselves can empower themselves and move forward. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take over that, but I just want to make sure that we are not causing more of a bottleneck and putting our people backwards versus all the work that we've been doing to help move them forward.
Okay, I heard the concern and heard the message. I'm gonna table this, and the executive is I'm gonna ask Amanda to put this on the executive agenda such that we can understand more how we move forward.
And Cliff, this is Kristen. I just want to wrap up a couple things because there were a couple questions that folks asked, so to make sure that I answered them. So Derek, your question about Triangle Family Services and Passage Home, I know that they are being talked to from different folks. I do not know yet if there is a meeting of all folks together. So I will check in with Verna about that. I think that is important that we bring them to the same room with grassroots leaders so that it's not this disjointed email conversations going on. So I'll take that back. And then Cliff, your question about residents talking with Dr. West. Yes, I think Verna is talking with Dr. Dr. West to make sure that the executive committee is invited to that conversation, but I know that there are several other kind of grassroots ground leaders that are going to be part of that. And then just to echo what Ms. Geraldine and Bielka were saying, I think there are opportunities to both take this moment to think ahead for policy change. So how do we, if we're going to help address some of those barriers now, how do we make sure that stays in place for the long term and it's not a short term fix for just this moment? And to Bielka's point, how do we work with families who, once the crisis has been addressed and they are in a stable position, how do we work with them so that they're able to carry that through beyond the moment? So I think there's a lot that we can be doing simultaneously. It's just going to take a lot of pulling us all together to do it. So with that, Cliff, we can move on to our next agenda item. And I'm going to...
Geraldine, mute
Thank
your
you,
phone,
Kristen.
Geraldine.
I'm sorry. I thought I had it on mute. I'm sorry. Y'all listening to me fix my breakfast. I'm so sorry.
You know what? I said it. I've been inboxing Kristen and Terrence said, we know you're over there cooking. I mean, the least you could do is put it on so we can have a cooking show while we're on this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, Cliff, and Miss Geraldine and Bielka. Our next action item is focused around the co-working call. Kristen, do you want to give us an update on how that went last week?
Yeah, so hopefully you all at least got the invitation that went out for a virtual grassroots idea exchange. So this was a conversation with Rob Shields from the City Network in Durham. And the focus was co-working and collaboration, kind of looking long-term beyond this crisis right now. How do we set ourselves up to do some of that in the future? City is a nonprofit co-working space in Durham, focused on grassroots organizations and providing a lower rent space for them to use, in addition to also shared services like printing and internet and those type of things. And also, I think most importantly, Rob would say, is the network. So actually bringing them together to support each other, to collaborate with each other, etc. So we had, back in 2019 with our Grassroots Nonprofit Leadership Academy, heard from the grassroots leaders over and over again that they were interested in more opportunities for collaboration, opportunities for shared services potentially. So how do you consolidate some of those costs so you're not spending as much money or time on administrative pieces and you can really focus on the work? So we were introduced to Rob from City and thought, this could be an interesting model that we could learn from. So the conversation last week, I think we had about 40 people register and probably 15 or 20 people who ended up joining the live session. And I thought it was a great conversation, kind of an introduction to the possibilities. And from the folks on the call, it seemed like there is interest in kind of continuing that conversation to explore the possibility for doing something similar in Raleigh/Wake County. So I will be sending out the recording from the session, I think in the next day or so, for anyone who was not able to join the session live. And if anyone is interested in having kind of a deeper dive, exploring the possibilities, you'll be invited to be part of that. And I would ask Cliff if there's anything else you would add, or Kathy, because I know you both were on that call.
This is Cliff. I would add that there's a interest out in the East to be a part of whatever we put together or we're thinking about. And I think we need to hear that conversation with those nonprofits out in the East as well.
I was very impressed by the presenter. He really was able to share a lot of great tools and resources that we could use now at home to help progress our organizations and the people that we serve. So, and I was really interested in how we could do something similar here in Raleigh and Wake County as well. So I thought the call to conference was very, very well worth it, and I'm looking forward to the follow-up.
Hey, this is Bernadette, and I've been out on medical leave, so I'm just getting my bearings back. So I would like to be included on that conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll put you on the list.
Hey, Bernadette, welcome back.
Yes. Thank you. Who is this?
Kathy. It's great to
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, sweetie.
Yes.
Thank you, Kristen. Does anybody else have any questions for Kristen before we move on?
Well, I didn't have a question, but this is Frances, and I would encourage anyone who hasn't been to Reed City and Durham to go. And the space that they're looking at, where we're talking about in Southeast Raleigh, or some considerations are near the high schools, and to be able to open up access in the community where people are, especially young people. It's a great environment, and you should really take a few moments to go out there and look at it.
Thank you, Frances. That's actually a great idea. Once we are able to be back in touch with folks, we might be able to set up kind of a social and economic vitality little journey where we can all kind of go together and get a tour and hear some more information in their space, because Verna and I had the opportunity to do that, and it is a cool space, and they have a lot of cool programming that's happening in conjunction for their nonprofits, as well as small businesses, and some kind of ongoing professional development opportunities that we could learn more about. So thanks.
Kristen, we have there is kind of a model of what Reed City is doing on Six Forks Road, and I can't remember the actual name of it, but it sits on Six Forks Road and Atlantic Avenue, and it has a very similar setup where it's shared space, and it looks very similar to Reed City. As a matter of fact, I think it's a little bit bigger than Reed City, so you might want to check into that too.
Is that the loading dock?
The loading dock, that's it.
Yes. Yes. And that
they also have one. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut out. They also have one downtown, and they have one over here off of Crabtree Boulevard. And so they're just kind of popping up kind of everywhere, because we did what is the name of the shopping center over there that they just renovated? So there's also one there.
Gateway.
Gateway.
And I will say, yes, they are very similar. I think the difference, Reed City is really focused on the network and supporting the nonprofit community. So it's not just, here's a space at low cost, but it's, what are the relationships we're building? What is the capacity building that our grassroots need? So it's space plus, I guess.
Yeah. It's a good way to be able to collaborate services. So if you can imagine, it's a hub where someone can come in and get assistance on housing, employment, coaching, whatever the other nonprofits are, and you can actually work on teaming with grants, because you can form a process out of the collaborative. Everybody kind of has a contributory piece. So it is more than just a working space. It's really more about services.
Can I I'm gonna say this last thing. I talked with the owner, with the person who owns it, because he is friends with my rich next door neighbors. So and that's how I learned about it before it even got there. When I was talking with him, those were the exact things that he was saying. Maybe it has not developed into that, into his idea of what it was, because he talked about the nonprofit collaboration, and he actually talked about getting more of our people of color involved in it. So it's kind of the same idea, because when he talked, as I said, he may not have gotten to that point, but those were the same things that he talked about.
Cool. So it sounds like maybe we can we can check back in with them and see where they're at. And I would say that this would not be new, because we have the CAG, we have kind of a lot of grassroots networks, so it's really just kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Not to say start a whole new thing, because we all know that that's the last thing that we need. So it's bringing the right people in the room and figuring it out.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the day-to-day DAS program, we eventually had, when we first started off a few years ago, we had rented space at Lee City to hold workshops and stuff. And again, that premise was that we would hopefully feed off of those other services and programs that were housed there, and it would be a shared service and a shared situation, and that did not occur. So I think if that's what we're looking to do, then you have to get the right folks in the room who are willing to play in the sandbox together for that to happen.
Yes, exactly. I think you're absolutely right.
Thank you. And next on the agenda is Easy Challenge and Community Day. And Dinus, do you want to take those points?
Yes, I will. Good morning, everyone. So as you all know, that we received some funding from the City of Raleigh Impact Grant to come up with the challenge, which is the Easy Challenge, empowering entrepreneurs and seeding innovation. So since about February, we have divided our participants, our planning committee, into an adult subcommittee meetings and also youth subcommittee meetings. And so we're still working through everything. Before I can just give you all an overview, and if you have any questions also. And if you also are wanting to join those committees, you can send me an email. Before the youth committee, we're planning for 2 weeks, and we're going to incorporate the Ice House model. And the same thing for the adults, but the adult component will be 10 weeks. And as of right now, we are trying to look towards the fall to see about doing this once everything is not back to normal, but everything is back open, and then possibly maybe doing the youth component online. We have monthly meetings, and we are thinking to, whenever we roll this out, to have about 16 youth participants and 30 adult participants. Chris, am I missing anything?
I'd just say, for those who aren't familiar with Ice House, I haven't been through the training myself, but it is focused on entrepreneurial mindset. So kind of the readiness for starting a business and how to think about that versus a more concrete business planning program. Because what we've heard from folks who are doing some of the business planning programs is that folks come in and they aren't necessarily ready for that. There's some pre-work and kind of introspection and thinking that needs to happen, and that the Ice House has been a really powerful tool for helping build that entrepreneurial mindset that then sets people up for success, or helps people realize, maybe I don't want to start a business. It's really just a community challenge that I want to solve by doing an event, or maybe I want to start a nonprofit, or kind of figuring out that there might be a different pathway for them to achieve what they were thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely helps to inspire like entrepreneurs, and also the entrepreneurial mindset, but also explore different career options, business, or whatever it may be that the person is trying to accomplish with their ideals. And so if that's something that you feel like you may be able to contribute to, you can send me an email. We have these meetings monthly. And if you feel compelled to join either the adult subcommittee or the youth subcommittee meetings, just send me an email and I can get you involved with that. And then for Community Day, we are still.
Dynasty.
Yes, I'm sorry.
This is Cliff. Did I miss the youth meeting this month?
No, you did not, Mr. Cliff. It's not until next. Hold on, I'm going to tell you the exact date. I'll send out a reminder to let you know too, but it is. this Thursday at
Okay.
9 o'clock, but I'll send you a reminder.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And then for Community Day, we are still trying to plan as normal. This year, we are planning for the fall. We have a date of October 2nd, seeing that everything is okay by then. We have monthly meetings with that as well. Right now, those meetings have just been internal just because we're trying to map out how we want this to look and how to allocate funds towards this, if those funds will be available. But if we do, if we are able to continue with planning Community Day, please be on the lookout for a save the date no later than the end of May.
Yes. Hey, good morning, everyone. I have a question. I'm Lonnie Irvin, Career Development Coordinator at Mary Phillips High School and President of eFusion Solution. So this question is for Kristen and for Dynasty. For those of us, or maybe just for me, that folks that aren't familiar with what the programs that you're speaking about, is there a website or do you have documents or a link that you can share that will help me to better understand what the offerings are, what the programs are about, and to see if I myself will be interested or if I have kids at my school that might benefit from it. Where do we go to find the information about the program? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, great question. Oh, go ahead, Dynasty.
I just was gonna, and Kristen, I'm sure you always wrap it up for me. But what I was gonna say was that after these meetings, we do send out minutes, as well as we have our newsletter. So there, and all of our program is always included in our newsletter. And after this meeting, Lonnie, I can shoot you an email and if that's something that you want to be involved with the Easy Challenge, we can go from there.
Okay, that would be great. I'm going to send you my email right now over chat. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. So yeah, at this point, we're in the planning phases. So if anyone is interested in entrepreneurship or maybe has expertise or resources or knows of an audience that would be interested, I'd say connect with us directly and we can have a conversation and share more information. We are planning to build a website or a web page at some point where folks will be able to go to learn more if they want to sign up. But at this point, since we're in the planning stages, you can just reach out to us directly.
Thank you, Kristen and Dynasty. Dynasty, was that everything? And does anybody have any more questions for Dynasty regarding Easy?
This is Cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just do one thing to make sure that Mr. Lonnie is satisfied in receiving all of what he's concerned with? Can I make sure that Kristen and Dynasty get with him and mentor him through the programs that we have and get him the necessary information and then just get back to the executive that he's fine with everything that he receives?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Cliff. But before I leave, I'd like to know, for the folks that are here, are any of you aware of Mary E. Phillips High School, what it's all about? I don't know if you've done this, a little intro, but I'd like to.
Yes, I am familiar with it.
Okay.
I had a son graduate from there, so I'm thoroughly familiar with it.
Okay. Because I see we have Ms. Gabrielle, she's on our Business Alliance, and some other folks, but it's a great opportunity for all the products that you have and the opportunities that you have. If you'd like to contact Mrs. Gabrielle as our chair, I don't know if I can, is it okay if I do that?
Yes, thank you. And Tamara's on here. Ms. Perkins.
Where's Tamara? And Tamara's on our Business Alliance as well.
Tamara,
so,
sorry, I do that. Tamara, sorry.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for, we have kids that are just chomping at the bits to do things. We're classified as an alternative school, but let me tell you, the best kept secret in Wake County Public Schools is our school. It's actually, I call it a magnet school. It's a magnet school. So kids are coming to our school that don't like being in a setting of 2,000 students. It's more of actually we classify ourselves as a family school. So any opportunities for our kids. We'd love to have you share it with us in any kind of way. Especially now, this would be great for us.
I would love for you to present maybe next month, since we do these meetings monthly and we have different presentations each month, if you would be willing to share a little bit more and some of the things that you're looking for support with, or that students would like to be connected to, because I do think there's a ton of folks on this call who would have potential connections with you if you'd be willing to do that.
Okay, yeah, I'll be willing to do that. And if you have any questions, and the folks that are on you already here, like Cliff, who's had a student that graduated, and Miss Gabrielle and Miss Tamara, who actually visited and seen what's going on, you can reach out to those folks and they can really give you some insight if you really, but I'd be more than happy to do that.
Awesome. We will follow up with you to just confirm that, but that would be awesome.
Sorry for the public broadcast announcement.
No, that's what this is for. Connections.
Thank you, guys. And finally, we have our action team updates. And Kathy, would you like to give us an update on TUM?
Yes. Thank you, guys. We actually had a pretty good meeting yesterday. We had to reschedule our meeting from last week, and we did have it yesterday with a couple of our members able to participate. We started out, of course, by checking in with each other and seeing how each other was doing and how we could help with any immediate needs that we had. We did have Ms. Leslie Brickhouse from Southeast Raleigh High School, who was in on our meeting, who wanted to share that the students are still going with their virtual learning at Southeast Raleigh High School. She gave us some information about how their SAT and college preparations were going and other needs that they have. But the major needs that she wanted us to help with was the sharing of information. And I think it all goes back to what Ms. Geraldine was saying this morning about how so many needs are there, but we have to be able to make these connections, and we have to be able to help our folks all the way through to get the resources that they need. So she wanted us to make sure that we were still continuing to do that as a committee and as a community resource. We also had updates from projects that we were doing as a committee. WaitWorks is still going strong. As of last week, we had more than 200 students that have already registered for the WaitWorks apprenticeship programs. And Lonnie, I think, was Lonnie the one from Mary E. Phillips High School?
Yes.
Okay. Lonnie, I do want to get with you about these apprenticeship opportunities that are provided by Wake Tech, the WaitWorks program. I think that will be a great opportunity for some of your students. It is a free apprenticeship program that Wake Tech is offering, and it includes everything from tuition to uniforms to class materials, all the way up to the placement of jobs. And the apprenticeships cover 10 different service areas, from HVACs to plumbing, electrician. They're all trades, but we all know, again, a highlight of this pandemic, what the real essential services are. So it's a great opportunity for the right student. But the WaitWorks program is still going. The link was sent out to all of our members yesterday. Christian, Amanda, or Dynasty, if you guys want to get that out to everyone, that would be great. There is a rolling orientation. So if students want to register, they can also register for the date that they want to have the orientation.
And orientation started yesterday. So, let's go ahead and get these individuals in.
Absolutely. I think the max that we wanted to do was 300. But I think there may be an opportunity to get even more students in there.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I take back my apologies for the public broadcast announcement.
Oh, no, not at all. We're glad that you
Thank you.
Needs. We also talked.
I
I have a question. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I got a question before you go forward. In reference to the apprenticeship or WakeWorks, is there an age limit to that in terms of?
I think the age limit, there were some, I think it was up to 24, but I think there are some apprenticeships that are even older than that. Some, I think it was the cutoff, I believe, was 32. I'm not absolutely 100% on that, but if you go on there, on the WakeWorks website, you can see it.
Okay, thank you.
This is Cliff. A question. Can we invite our Eastern partnership as well to take advantage of that? I'm thinking about Nightdale at least.
Yes, you certainly can. It is countywide. It's a countywide program, Cliff.
Yeah,
All right, let's make sure that we get some information out to the center out there that we're working with to make sure that they know that they are welcome.
Okay.
Are you talking about the Zebulon area?
Yeah,
or you can use me because I am with Wake Tech, so I'm part of that. So they can contact me also.
Thank you.
We also talked about, we had Nikki from Capital Area Workforce Development who was able to join us to talk about some resources that they have available now for unemployment, but also she spoke about their reentry crisis. As you all know, there are some that have been released because of the pandemic, and the needs for those folks, especially again for housing, is very critical right now. So she's reaching out to try to help as many people as she can. But again, with our collective resources, if there's anything that we could do to help with that would be a great help as well. And again, just more gaps that we need to try to address.
Yes.
And then finally, we talked about the Workforce Development Month in September. We did have a couple of ideas that we wanted to explore more with our members, with our committee members. One of those ideas was workshops for small businesses. First of all, including the definition of small business. Apparently there is a lot of different definitions of what small businesses are. So we wanted to see if we could have some workshops on that. And then also the diversification of small businesses. We've all been able to see how so many small businesses have been able to reinvent themselves in light of this epidemic. So we wanted to see how we could help support small businesses in doing that. And then we also, another idea that came out that I thought was really great was more discussions and forums on the living wage in Raleigh and Wake County. Again, not all coming, I think Gabrielle was right. It's not all coming because of the pandemic, but a light has been shone on how critical these needs are for living wages in Raleigh and Wake County. So those were just a couple of ideas that we thought we would talk about, or topics that we needed to highlight during Workforce Development Month in September. When we get together as a larger group, we will definitely want to discuss more topics that we could talk about or highlight in September. And our next meeting will be as scheduled next month.
Thank you, Kathy. And does Nikki or anyone from the Racial Equity Action Team want to give us an update on what y'all were talking about in your meeting this month?
Hey, this is Stephanie. We did not meet this month. We are supposed to be rescheduling, and I will follow up with Nikki and Mr. Ballin on when that will be.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
But I would like to say that some of the things as a member, one of the things that did happen is having to reach out to Michael Balin to have a talk with the city officials and Raleigh police to get hotel owners to stop trespassing folks as a way to get them out. And so Michael did take that to the chief of police. Really don't know the outcome. Haven't heard anymore. Well, haven't heard anything else from that end. But I do know that hotel owners are not. Many of them are not complying with the evictions order. So what they do to get them out is do a trespass warrant. So we've been trying to deal with that issue.
Mr. Geraldine, can I ask you a question about the hotels? Because on our daily group with the schools meeting, we've been talking about what's called the McKinney-Vento children. These are the kids that are in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, but for those of it, so these are families that are living in the hotels, and we've been getting a lot of questions as to why. I was questioning as to why each week when we were doing the weekly boxes, many of these families were not at the hotels. We met with a few of the families and got some feedback from the social workers. Some of it was exactly what you were talking about, that they're being trespassed, not to, how do you say, workaround of the
the non-eviction moratorium.
And so one of the things that we found was that a lot of the hotels, if some of these nonprofits or anyone would work with the hotels on setting us a base rate, because we had one family in particular, she would go on hotels.com or whatever each night to find where she could afford. So it was hard keeping track of where the families were at because they were changing hotels very often. One of the things that, again, putting the power back into our families, I was very, we went down to talk to one of the property owners because the families were complaining how they weren't being treated correctly. I must say this, we have to help our families help themselves. I was disheartened to see that the real reason why the property owner really wanted them out had nothing to do with them not paying their bills. It really was for disorderly conduct. And trying to help our families to understand that this non-eviction moratorium is not a free-for-all. It really was, we also have to respect, it's a two-sided street. We have to help our families understand, just like the persons that's renting one of my properties right now has lost their job, we're making arrangements for them so that they can do a payment repay. But if we're having where it's not just the property owners, we got to help our families understand how to be at some of these hotels. Some of these hotels are saying they don't want to deal with our families. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute, you've been dealing with them before COVID-19. But there is this push also. It's two sides of that coin. We got to help our families to understand how, what's some of the things that they are doing that's also causing them to be trespassed. It's not all about the money. Some of it is, and I admit to that, because we met with a couple of them who said that the city had no right and that no one has the right to tell them that they can have people living there for free. But it does come, and then I explained to them it's not for free, they still have a bill. But we also have to, once again, work with our families to understand while they're at the hotels, there's certain things. I mean, we were there, we saw the social worker and the police and everybody who got involved in those situations. We saw what was happening. And honestly, if they were at my property, I would ask them to leave also.
Yeah, I got that. And like I say, and I'm not denying anything that you say, but I also work with families who that is not the case.
Right, and that's, but I just want to say the two sides. Right.
Yeah. And I just want to keep it up because yes, we do have to teach, but we can't teach families if they're on the streets. That's
true. And I agree with that. I just want us to also look at the perspective from the business owners.
I do because I do too.
Yeah, in the midst of this, we want
with the business owner. He explained that to me very well. He told me how he had worked with families and been left with bills for $2,500. So I got you. I'm with you on that. But I am saying to you that there are cases where it's not really about disorderly conduct. There's so many cases where it's not really about orderly conduct. So we still have to work to get them to at least comply with the bill as it is, because what we're about right now is stop spreading this virus.
Exactly.
We need to deal with all this other stuff, but regardless of what people are doing and what they ain't doing and whatever, that, this is an opportunity to teach. But right now, we have to get folks up out of this thing, sleeping on people's floors and all this close contact, running in and out. All our behinds are gonna be. I mean, my granddaughter is sick with some kind of virus right now, so
This is Cliff. This is Cliff. I'm gonna put a pause. I'm gonna put a pause because I'm about 5 minutes away from adjourning the meeting, and there's still some agenda item that needs to go through.
Go ahead, baby.
Okay, I think the last thing that we have, Mr. Cliff, is an update on community leadership and the joint action team. Kristen, do you want to weigh in on those?
Yeah, sure. So Community Leadership Action Team has been for the past couple of months working on figuring out kind of our focus for 2020 and looking at a leadership roadmap that we had started a while ago, kind of what are the different pathways to leadership at home, at work, and in the community. And on our last call, which was a month ago, Dr. Brookins from NC State shared information about incentive grants through NC State, which faculty on campus can apply for. They're $10,000, and the focus is community engaged, either research or teaching or student projects. And so Dr. Brookins talked with us about an idea to create kind of a community engagement toolkit. So we have this Wake Community University partnership with NC State, so trying to figure out how we can leverage resources from the university and engage them in our social and economic vitality work in a way that is respectful and meaningful and beneficial to the communities. And so he talked about building kind of a toolkit that would help prepare students, faculty, and any partners in the community to work with communities in a way that is, like I said, very respectful of the history, culture, experience, etc. So we talked through that with the Community Leadership Action Team, at least the folks who were able to be at that meeting, and how we can really lift up the community narrative, community stories, have community leaders help develop that toolkit alongside NC State, so it's truly reflective of community. And so Dr. Brookins and I were able to submit the grant on, I think like a week ago, last Friday. And we did include, I think about half of the grant would be to provide stipends for residents to do that work, because we feel like that's just as important as having grad students involved in that work, is really compensating residents for that work. So we should find out, I think, the beginning of May whether we got that grant. But in the meantime, we have a meeting tomorrow for our Leadership Action Team, and it's really just a check-in to touch base to see how folks are doing and figure out what's next.
Thank you, Kristen. And do you have an update on the Joint Action Team as well, for when that will be meeting?
Yeah, I don't have an update. We had talked about I think several of the action teams were kind of talking about some similar topics, and we had wanted at one point to try and do regular joint action team meetings, maybe quarterly or at least twice a year. And we started to think about that, and then this happened, the current situation. So we have not picked a date to see if we want to try and do that virtually, but we may want to do that. So we'll probably be talking, Social and Economic Vitality Team will be talking to figure out when and how we could make that work.
Okay, thank you, Kristen.
Yeah,
And
this is Cliff. On that topic, that needs to come into the executive as well. So Amanda put that as an agenda item on the executive meeting.
Got you. And before we close, does anybody have any quick questions or ongoing resources that they would like to share with the group?
I just like to know, when is it that the executive team is meeting? Because I haven't been a part of an executive team in God knows meeting, and God knows when, because I don't know when they're meeting.
They're still on your calendar, Mr. O'Dean.
They're on my calendar?
Yeah, they still at the same time every month. We haven't had one because of the fact that, people are going through everything, and Mr. Cliff was out, and it just seemed like it was just me and Derek on the calls at times. So can't really get much done with that, but we're going to revisit all that since Cliff is back, and we can refocus on everything.
And this is Bielka real quick. We are looking at, Ms. Geraldine, something you had asked about the online coaching. We've been coaching with our MC participants weekly, those that were on the weekly group, and we are now moving to monthly resources. We are planning specials for anyone to be able to log on. So this is a great opportunity for us to once we get the dates confirmed, they will include resources such as CSIRC dealing with mental health services. We have Operation Hope, who will be doing the budgeting and financing. And we have a couple others that will be joining us, Step Up Ministries, and just a lot of the different partners will be there to help us navigate online for our families to get resources to continue for them to be moving forward and becoming self-sufficient. We've even tossed around a couple ideas that I'm actually doing with my youth groups, and that's going to be including doing online Zumba. Our health team coaches are going to be helping us do food nutrition resources. And there was one request from someone out in Wake Forest area for us to do was cooking on a budget, and having our FNAP staff do some online cooking with things that most folks may already have in their home, the pastas and things, so forth, and how to safely prepare meals. So please stay tuned to that. Hopefully we'll have that schedule. Kristen's been helping me with CSIRC and getting some other ideas out. So they will be on Thursday night, so they're not in conflict with our Middle Class Express coaching groups. But, and I apologize, the budgeting will be on Thursday nights. The others will be on Tuesday nights, and these will be available for anyone to log on. I just had another meeting this morning where we are setting up registries of registration so that we know who is logging on, because we've heard, and I have not had the problems with some folks have getting, how do you call that, bomb? Like when someone jump onto your hacking onto their Zoom. So to help with that, we're going to be setting up registrations where folks will go in, register, and by having their registration, that would also allow us to also continue sending out various emails and resources. We just got approved to send out to the community resource documents that Regina, our director, had us pull together. So I will send that to Stephanie or Amanda or our team to send out to the rest of the CAG, that we can send to members, and they can access resources themselves.
Okay, now let me be clear. When I asked about coaching, I wasn't asking as far as why I was asking is because a lot of folks are wanting to talk to counselors.
Right. So we are setting up the individual councils as well.
Wait a minute. Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
And what I was asking was, is there some way that folks can, as I read, I mean, within your realm, it's going to be made available to those folks that's within you guys, the people that you serve and whatever. But folks on the outside, how do I refer those folks to a line that they can pick up and call and just have somebody to talk to about their mental health?
Right, and we are working on that with CSIRC to be able to do, they were doing it at Crosby, picking up schedules for folks to sign up for the mental health services. So that is something that's going to be available online as well, and on by phone. And I did fail to mention, Mr.
Well, that's what I meant. That's what I was. That's
Yeah.
what I was really thinking about. Phone service.
And we are going to be doing a segue into kind of a smaller MC light, where we will be doing a group coaching for people in the community to just log on and just do smaller steps versus the full 5-year life plan, we can do that afterwards. But for right now, to address immediate needs, there will be more like access to resources where they can log on, be it a phone call and or the video, and they'll be able, so if we have a topic on housing, folks will be able to call in or log on video to learn about the housing resources, including how to become homeowners. Habitat and other folks are still moving forward. So we want to get that information out to folks. So there will be topics where on top of the mental health, on top of the budgeting, access to resources right now. So we've even looked at breaking down that resource look and let people ask their specific questions, like charity, Catholic charities. They're no longer having to have a referral. A lot of people didn't know that. How do you access diapers and those types of things? So we want to start doing things where folks can send, just ask their questions right there and get an answer on the spot as well.
And we can send out, so CSERC, we have been working with them to make sure we don't want to send out the information if they don't have open appointment slots. We don't want to set up the idea that there's access to counseling and then there's not, but in talking with them, it does sound like they have capacity to support some additional appointments, so we can share that information soon, the intake line. In addition to that, I can have Stephanie include information that's like a statewide crisis number. I think it's Hope for NC or something like that. It is not a counseling service, but it is a 24/7 crisis hotline. So if someone is experiencing something and needs to just talk to someone, that is available for just a short-term intervention.
Could you send that to me? Send that link to me, Kristen.
I will do that.
Thank you.
So I wanted to give a quick update on, from a financial standpoint. I work for a financial institution, so I just wanted to give everybody some quick tidbits on some things that are happening within the finance world. If anybody in your circles or the people that you work with have Fannie Mae loans, they can call their institution and just tell them, all they have to do is state, because of financial hardship due to COVID-19, I'd like a forbearance of up to 6 months on my mortgage. And so they are not allowed to ask for any documentation. They're not allowed to do anything. The only thing that they need is that statement from anybody who has a Fannie Mae loan, and they are required by law to put them into a 6-month forbearance. After that point in time, after the 6 months is over, if anyone is still in a situation where they can't afford their mortgage, they can get up to another 6-month extension, so without question. So please inform anybody in your circles that have Fannie Mae loans that is an option. And like I said, institutions are not allowed to ask for paperwork. They're not allowed to ask for proof. All they have to hear is that due to COVID-19, I'm experiencing financial hardship. Okay. The other piece is that a lot of financial institutions are offering skip-a-pay so that you're able to skip payments on your loans. And so you're able to call in and request that. I know Coastal for a fact if you have an account with Coastal, if you know anybody who has an account with Coastal, if they have online banking, as soon as you log into online, the box pops up, and any loan that's eligible for that skip-a-pay, you can click on it and skip up to, I think it's 3 or 4 months of payments. So that will help also. Also, there are institutions that are offering relief loans up to certain amounts. I know State Employees is doing it. Coastal is doing it up to $7,500 if you have accounts here. Basically, if you just have need for income influx for a couple of months, they are offering that to you as well. But the biggest thing is the mortgage piece, and just making sure that people know. And then for those that don't have Fannie Mae mortgages, companies are also still offering a forbearance. You just have to ask. So don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to call in. Don't avoid your creditors, because everyone's a lot more lenient right now on things. So it's better to talk to them than not to talk to them. Get ahead of it. If you know for a fact that you're going to be in a situation where you can't make a payment coming up, it's better to let them know so that they can work out things with you now. So my biggest advice is, stay in communication with your your creditors and just be open and honest with them about the situations that you have going on, because everybody's in a situation where they're doing more than they've ever done in the past to make sure that people get through this. And then I've sent in a link. Coastal has created a page on our website that gives resources and links to nonprofit organizations that we as a Coastal work with. We've given a lot of money away over the last couple of weeks to organizations to the tune of almost $750,000 to organizations in the community that are doing things really quickly to get money out. So a lot of those institutions are listed on our website that have received money, so we know they have money to help. So please use that as a resource option as well.
Would you repeat that again? Would you repeat that again?
Which part?
The part about the bank giving nonprofits money to assist. Is it to assist with direct services to people, or what?
Whatever, we've given unrestricted money. So whatever they do, they have unrestricted money to do it. We've given out some grants to organizations in the community to do that.
And that list of organizations is on your. Could you give me the website real quick?
It's in the link. I just sent it in the group chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So just click on that and it'll take you to that page.
Okay, thank you.
But it lists what they do and it gives a direct link to their actual websites as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. One thing, just want to emphasize, it's very, very important for any of the nonprofits or any of the businesses, they have their paperwork in order. That is very, very important. And sometimes we don't like to hear it, but when we don't have the paperwork that's required and the documentation that's required, there are a lot of fraud signals. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses and nonprofits were kind of caught not having everything in order and so forth, even to the point of where some people did not have a separate business account with the bank where they had established a relationship. So that stuff makes a big difference. And then I can't emphasize how important it is to call, as far as the regular consumer stuff, to call ahead of time before the payment is late. It's very, very important. I listened to some calls from Experian and TransUnion and stuff all last couple of weeks, and it is absolutely critical. Don't wait until it's late. And that's something, I hate to say it, a lot of, from a cultural standpoint, people do, but don't wait till it's late. Call ahead of time. A lot of our folks are like one paycheck away from being out, and it's critical to call.
Yeah. The other piece that I forgot to mention is everybody knows that the small business money ran out. But from a financial standpoint, we are hearing that money is going to open back up again. So it's super important that if you have people who didn't get it the first time, to go ahead and get their applications in the queue. So when the money does get released again, that they can actually be already in the queue to receive whatever's coming up next. I think they're looking at about another 20 billion or so that they're going to look at releasing, but you have to have your application in the queue. And I know Coastal, we have partnered with an organization called Lendio to be able to take applications. You don't have to have an account with Coastal. You don't have to have any type of relationship with Coastal. We're just providing that as a resource for small businesses to be able to put their application in and get it in the queue. So I'll put that link out here as well as soon as I find that. But it's super important that if they didn't get the money the first time, that they actually find a way to get the application into the system. So when the money is released the second time, that their applications are already in the queue, because it's going to go just as fast as the first set of monies did.
Yep.
Thank you. And Rich, that was actually something that came up in training for upward mobility for a potential, if we focus on small businesses in September, to provide some workshops around how to get your business in order, recognizing that's not an immediate response, but in preparation for if something like this were to happen again, we could have folks ready, more prepared for it. Amanda, do you want to share what is in the chat box? Looks like some folks.
Sure. We have some links in here. The first one being from Kirsten Ingram. And there is a National Society of Black Engineers chapter meeting, and that is this Thursday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. There is a link in here for the Eventbrite if you are interested in attending that virtual meeting. From Emma, 4-H is operating virtually for youth to join clubs and programs which are through NCSU accounts with strong security protocols for safety. 4-H is still continuing with competitions for youth to stay engaged virtually and improve research and communication skills. And Priscilla dropped the link for the Coastal Community Resource, and thank you, Priscilla. That was very, very informative and helpful. And then there is a link to a newsletter in here from the men's health screening event that was held this past September if you're interested in following up on that. So those links are in the chat if you guys are interested in doing any of those things. And I think that completes everything that was on the agenda. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we close? Okay, well, I hope you guys stay well. Thank you for coming to this meeting. Either myself or Stephanie will be in contact with you all about when the next meeting will be for next month. And have a great day and a good rest of your week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Y'all
Bye,
have a good
everybody. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Yes, indeed. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stay safe.